My sister faked a pregnancy report to my fiancé, causing him to end our engagement. She never knew I was secretly paying her college fees and covering every house expense. So I stopped the support and walked away. What happened next? Can you imagine discovering a shocking betrayal that shatters your entire family minutes before your wedding rehearsal dinner? I'm talking about a betrayal so deep, so calculated, it forced me to reveal a secret that fundamentally changed everything, from my sister's smug smile to my parents' carefully constructed reality. The truth. It ripped our family wide open, exposing years of hidden lies and resentments, all because my sister tried to fake a pregnancy to ruin my wedding. Growing up, my sister Stephanie and I looked like a typical family from the outside. But underneath, a toxic current of favoritism ran through everything. She was years younger, always the baby of the family, and it felt like my parents never truly saw how their blatant indulgence warped our relationship and chipped away at my self-esteem. From elementary school on, I was the responsible one, the achiever. I'd do chores without being asked, pull straight A's, join every club. Meanwhile, Stephanie could do no wrong. She'd throw tantrums when asked to clean her room, and they'd just do it for her. She'd fail a test, and somehow, it was always the teacher's fault. The message was crystal clear. I had to earn every crumb of praise, while Stephanie received endless adoration just for existing. Scarlett, you're the older sister. You need to set an example. My mom's voice, a constant refrain, echoed through my childhood, a stark reminder that my feelings, my needs, always came second to Stephanie's comfort. It was soul-crushing. Despite that constant lack of real parental support, I pushed myself. I excelled academically, earning a full scholarship to an Ivy League university where I dove into computer science and business. My parents came to my graduation, sure, but the entire day became a background for them to fret about Stephanie's struggles with her college applications. My biggest achievement, completely minimized, reduced to a footnote in Stephanie's unfolding drama. After college, I poured everything into a tech startup, one of the first employees. Those early years were brutal. 80-hour work weeks, sleeping under my desk, living on ramen to save every penny. But the sacrifice, it paid off. By 26, I was the chief technology officer. And at 28, when the company was acquired, I walked away with enough money to never work again if I chose not to. It was more than I ever dreamed of. Ironically, my financial success coincided with my parents' devastating business failure. They'd run a small, successful retail store for 20 years, but a string of bad decisions, an economic downturn, and the crushing competition from big box stores left them on the brink of bankruptcy. My proud father never told me directly. I only found out when my mother called, her voice trembling with tears, confessing they couldn't make their mortgage payment. That night, I made a decision that would forever entangle our family and me in a web of secrets. I would help them, but it had to be secret. I didn't want them to feel like failures, and honestly, I definitely didn't want Stephanie to know I had money. She'd already shown alarming signs of jealousy whenever anything good happened in my life. When I brought my boyfriend, Mark, home for Thanksgiving that year, Stephanie's behavior was a glaring red flag. Mark was amazing, a talented architect, kind, brilliant, and he treated me with such respect. The moment Stephanie met him, I saw it a shift. Her laugh became louder, almost performative. She touched his arm repeatedly during conversations, and somehow managed to mention her single status at least 5 times during dinner. "Your sister seems nice," Mark said later, completely oblivious to her overt flirtation. That's Mark, I thought, always seeing the best in people. "She can be," I responded vaguely, my complicated feelings already forming a knot in my stomach. I just didn't want to taint his impression of her. By this point, my secret financial arrangements were already firmly in place. Through a maze of shell companies and trusts, I was quietly paying my parents' mortgage, car payments, health insurance, and credit card bills. I'd even set up a scholarship for Stephanie's college tuition and paid for her apartment near campus. None of them had a clue the money came from me. My parents believed they'd qualified for special financial assistance programs. Stephanie thought her scholarship was from some anonymous alumni foundation. I wanted to help them, yes, but without becoming the family ATM, and more importantly, without ever having to hear my parents praise Stephanie for receiving financial help, while I'd worked for everything I ever had. Looking back, I know I was enabling unhealthy patterns, not truly helping my family grow. But at the time, it felt like the kindest, most dignified solution. I was preserving their pride. What I didn't realize was how my secrecy would eventually collide with Stephanie's deep-seated jealousy, creating the perfect storm that would nearly destroy our entire family. My tech company's acquisition wasn't just successful, it was the kind of exit that made headlines. Our small team had developed an innovative algorithm that a major tech giant simply couldn't resist. When the dust settled, I found myself with over $12 million before my 30th birthday. I moved money into conservative investments, donated to causes I cared about, bought a comfortable but not extravagant house, and set aside a significant portion specifically for my family's needs. I wasn't flashy about my wealth. I drove the same Honda I'd had for years, lived well below my means. Few people in my life knew about my financial situation, and that's exactly how I wanted it. When I discovered my parents' business was failing, the depth of their desperation truly shocked me. 3 months behind on their mortgage, maxed out credit cards, even predatory loans just to keep their store afloat. The crushing weight of this knowledge, it was overwhelming. These were the people who had always projected financial savviness, who had lectured me about responsibility while indulging Stephanie's every whim. "Miss Preston, are you sure you want to structure things this way?" My financial advisor, Thomas, had asked, his brow furrowed with concern. Family financial entanglements can get complicated quickly. "I'm sure," I insisted, my voice firm. "They can't know it's coming from me." Thomas, a master of discretion, helped me create several legitimate legal entities that would serve as buffers. A trust that appeared to be from a distant relative, a fake scholarship fund for Stephanie, a business grant program that just happened to select my parents for assistance. The paperwork was airtight, but every dollar ultimately came from my account. Within weeks, my parents received a letter, approved for a special refinancing program, reducing their mortgage payment by 60%. Another letter arrived offering a substantial business stabilization grant. Stephanie got notice that an anonymous donor had selected her for a full-ride scholarship covering tuition, housing, and a monthly stipend. The change in their lives was immediate, dramatic. My parents stopped, looking perpetually stressed at family dinners. Stephanie moved from her cramped dorm room to a luxury apartment near campus. Their gratitude was directed at faceless institutions and lucky circumstances, never at me. For a while, this arrangement felt perfect. I could help my family without changing our relationship dynamic. But cracks, small at first, began to appear. Despite her education and living expenses being fully covered, Stephanie started dropping classes. By her junior year, she was barely enrolled part-time, though she dutifully told our parents she was focusing on her major courses. I, however, received the real enrollment reports as the scholarship provider. More concerning was her pattern with relationships and jobs. She'd date someone for a few months, create drama, break up, and then spend lavishly to heal her broken heart. She'd get hired somewhere, work a few weeks, clash with management, quit or get fired, then take months to find another position, all while maintaining her luxury lifestyle thanks to the stipend I provided. When Stephanie maxed out her first credit card at 21, I received a desperate call from my mother. "Scarlett, I hate to ask, but your sister is in a bit of trouble financially. We helped as much as we could, but with the store still recovering, I pretended to contribute a small amount while secretly paying off the entire card through my financial network. This pattern repeated several times over the next few years, the amounts growing larger and larger each time. When Mark proposed after 2 wonderful years of dating, I was ecstatic. We planned a wedding for the following spring, nothing ostentatious, but beautiful and deeply meaningful. My parents insisted on contributing, so I arranged for them to receive an unexpected insurance reimbursement that they could use for wedding expenses, effectively allowing them to pay with my money while maintaining their pride. As wedding planning progressed, Stephanie's behavior became increasingly erratic, almost malicious. As my maid of honor, she was involved in many aspects of the planning, but it felt like she was actively sabotaging at every turn. Appointments mysteriously rescheduled without my knowledge. Deposits went missing. Vendor communications accidentally deleted from her phone. I tried to dismiss these incidents as Stephanie's general disorganization, but a chilling pattern was emerging that I just couldn't ignore. Then, one night, while reviewing my financial monitoring systems, a routine check I'd set up for my family's accounts, I noticed unusual withdrawals from Stephanie's debit card. She had visited an urgent care clinic and made several purchases at a medical supply store. Around the same time, I found evidence she'd been researching pregnancy symptoms, medical terminology, and how to create fake medical documents. A cold, heavy dread washed over me. I immediately increased the monitoring on her accounts and communications, justifying the invasion of privacy with my rapidly growing concern. What I discovered was worse than I could have imagined. Stephanie wasn't just jealous of my wedding. She was actively plotting to ruin it. Wedding planning should have been one of the happiest times of my life, but Stephanie managed to turn it into a minefield of stress and doubt. As my maid of honor, she had access to everything, giving her ample opportunity for sabotage. The first real red flag appeared 3 months before the wedding when I arrived at the florist for a consultation, only to be told my appointment had been rescheduled for the following week. Stephanie had called, claiming to be my assistant, and changed it without telling me. When I confronted her, she feigned wide-eyed innocence. "Oh, I thought I told you. I must have forgotten to text you after they called me. Wedding brain, right?" She laughed it off, but something in her eyes didn't match her carefree explanation. A week later, our venue called in a panic. They hadn't received the deposit to secure our date. I distinctly remembered giving Stephanie a check to deliver during her lunch break, since the venue was near her apartment. The check had been cashed, but somehow the money never reached the venue. Stephanie claimed there must have been a mix-up at their office and offered to handle it. I later discovered she had deposited the check into her own account and used my money to make a down payment on a new car. "It was just a timing issue with my account," she explained when I confronted her with the bank records. "I was going to transfer the money to them this week." I chose to believe her, writing it off as Stephanie's typical financial irresponsibility rather than outright malice. Looking back, I realized now I was willfully blind. The engagement party provided even more evidence of Stephanie's true intentions. Mark's brother, James, pulled me aside during the celebration, looking deeply uncomfortable. "I don't want to cause drama," he murmured, "but I think you should know your sister has been texting Mark pretty frequently. He mentioned she keeps asking him to meet for coffee to discuss wedding surprises for you." Mark confirmed this when I asked him privately, showing me the increasingly flirtatious messages from Stephanie that he had been politely deflecting. He hadn't mentioned them because he didn't want to create tension between us. "I thought she was just being friendly," he said, troubled. "Should I be worried?" "No," I assured him, though worry was now a cold knot gnawing at my gut. "I'll handle Stephanie." When I confronted her about the messages, she burst into tears, claiming she was just trying to make sure Mark was good enough for me. Her performance was utterly convincing, complete with trembling lips and wet eyes. I almost believed her, until I noticed her subtly checking her reflection in a nearby mirror to see how she looked while crying. Around this time, Stephanie began dropping hints about mysterious doctor appointments and vague health concerns. At first, she was coy, leaving breadcrumbs for the family to follow. "Oh, I don't want to worry anyone," she'd sigh dramatically at family dinner. "But the doctor wants to run some additional tests. It's probably nothing." My mother would immediately launch into a full-blown panic, demanding details and offering to accompany Stephanie to appointments. My father would grow quiet, his face lined with worry. The spotlight would remain firmly on Stephanie for the rest of the evening, any mention of wedding plans completely forgotten. During bridesmaid dress fittings, Stephanie created another scene by claiming she needed a larger size because she was retaining water due to her medical condition. When the seamstress, ever practical, suggested alterations instead, Stephanie became tearful. "You don't understand," she whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "There might be a reason I need extra room in a few months, if you know what I mean." The other bridesmaids immediately swarmed her with questions and congratulations, despite Stephanie's theatrical insistence that it was too early to say anything definite. I watched this performance with growing suspicion, noting how her eyes constantly darted to gauge my reaction. My doubts continued to multiply, but some twisted sense of family, loyalty, or maybe just denial kept me from voicing them. Then, I found Stephanie's diary while helping my parents clean their attic. I knew, rationally, I shouldn't read it. But when I saw Mark's name and my name repeatedly mentioned, my curiosity, my gut-wrenching fear, overrode my ethics. The entries confirmed my worst fears. Scarlett always gets everything. The perfect grades, the perfect job, the perfect fiancé. Mom and Dad pretend to be proud of me, too, but I see how they look at her. Now she's having this big wedding while I'm still single. It's not fair, but I have a plan that will make everyone forget about Scarlett's perfect day. By the time I'm done, all anyone will remember about this wedding is me. Another entry meticulously detailed her research into creating fake medical documents and her plan to announce a pregnancy, and then complications, during the wedding festivities to steal the spotlight. She'd even practiced her concerned but brave face in the mirror. I should have confronted her immediately, but part of me simply couldn't believe my own sister would go this far. I needed more evidence. And unfortunately, Stephanie was about to provide it. As the wedding week arrived and family gathered from across the country, Stephanie's health concerns intensified. She had clearly scheduled her dramatic revelation for the rehearsal dinner, where she would have the largest, most captive audience. I watched her preparations with a growing sense of dread and grim determination. She had no idea that I knew her plan, nor did she realize how much power I actually held over her life. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change our family forever. The night of the rehearsal dinner, I slipped a folder of financial documents into my purse. Irrefutable evidence of my years of support. If Stephanie wanted to play with fire, she was about to learn I controlled the whole damn forest. Our rehearsal dinner was held at the Belmont, an upscale restaurant with a private dining room overlooking the glittering city skyline. Mark and I had chosen it for its intimate atmosphere and exceptional food. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the long mahogany table where 40 of our closest friends and family gathered. The room hummed with conversation and laughter as everyone enjoyed cocktails before the meal. I should have been savoring these moments, but my attention was fixed, laser-focused on Stephanie. She was acting increasingly strange. She kept checking her phone, stepping away for mysterious calls, whispering conspiratorially with one of her friends who wasn't even part of the wedding party. She'd chosen to wear a form-fitting dress that dramatically emphasized her midsection, which she kept rubbing absently, ensuring everyone noticed. "Are you feeling okay, Stephanie?" my mother asked, loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "You seem uncomfortable, sweetheart." "I'm fine, Mom," Stephanie replied with a brave smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Just a little tired. The doctor said I need to rest more in my condition." My mother's eyes widened, and she launched into a hushed but animated conversation with Stephanie. I watched them from across the room, noting how Stephanie strategically positioned herself so most guests could observe their apparently private discussion. Mark approached, handing me a glass of champagne. "Everything okay? You've barely smiled all evening." "Just wedding nerves," I lied, not wanting to taint his night with my dark suspicions. "I'm going to check on the seating arrangements." Instead, I watched Stephanie like a hawk until she finally put down her phone and slipped away to the restroom. The moment she disappeared down the hallway, I made my move. Her designer purse sat unattended at her place setting, her phone on top, still unlocked. I knew I had, maybe, 2 minutes before she returned. My heart pounded in my chest as I quickly picked up the phone, feeling like a thief despite being in pursuit of the truth. A text conversation with someone named Jess was open on the screen. Stephanie * Jess, the fake report is perfect. Doctor's office letterhead and everything. Jess * OMG, are you really going through with this? Stephanie * hell yes. The announcement tonight. Then complications during the ceremony. All eyes on me. Not Miss Perfect. Jess * what if someone calls the doctor to check? Stephanie * no one would dare. Besides, I'll have a miscarriage after the honeymoon. Perfect timing to ruin their return. Jess * your sister will hate you forever. Stephanie * she'll get over it. Besides, she has everything else. I deserve one day where people care about me. I quickly scrolled through more messages, finding photos of the forged pregnancy documents and details of her plan to fake crying spells and eventually a dramatic collapse during our vows. My hands shook with a potent cocktail of rage and heartbreak. I snapped photos of the conversations with my own phone, then returned Stephanie's phone exactly as I found it. When Stephanie returned, our eyes met across the room. I maintained a neutral expression, but something in my gaze must have alarmed her, because she quickly looked away and busied herself talking to one of the groomsmen. Dinner was served, and as coffee and dessert arrived, my father stood to make a toast. Just as he raised his glass, Stephanie dramatically placed her hand on her stomach and gasped. The timing was impeccable, interrupting the father of the bride moments before he could praise his daughter on her special weekend. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice carrying perfectly across the now silent room. "I wasn't going to say anything this weekend because I didn't want to take attention away from Scarlett and Mark, but—" She paused for effect, tears welling in her eyes. "I've been having some complications with my pregnancy. The doctor said I need to take it easy, but I wanted to be here for my sister." The room erupted in concerned murmurs. My mother rushed to Stephanie's side while my father stood frozen, his toast forgotten. Mark looked at me in confusion, clearly wondering if I'd known about this supposed pregnancy. I felt a strange, cold calm descend over me as I stood up, wine glass in hand. The room gradually quieted as people noticed me preparing to speak. "Thank you for your concern for my sister," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the fury bubbling inside me. "But I think we should clarify something. Stephanie, would you like to tell everyone the truth about your pregnancy, or should I?" Stephanie's face paled, but she recovered quickly, her practiced indignation taking over. "Scarlett, I know you're upset about the timing, but this isn't about you for once." I smiled tightly. "You're right. It isn't about me. It's about you lying to everyone in this room. There is no pregnancy, is there, Stephanie?" Gasps echoed around the table. Stephanie's expression hardened. "How dare you? Why would I lie about something like this? To ruin my wedding, according to your text with Jess." I held up my phone, showing the screenshots I'd taken. The fake doctor's report was a nice touch. Very convincing letterhead. Stephanie's face contorted with rage, but then, chillingly, it shifted into a smug smile. "You went through my phone. That's a new low, Scarlett. Always the perfect sister, right? Well, at least I don't pretend to be something I'm not. Everyone thinks you're so successful, but you're just a pathetic control freak who can't stand when someone else gets attention." It was the moment I'd been waiting for. I reached into my purse and pulled out the folder I'd prepared. "Speaking of control," I said quietly, my voice cutting through the stunned silence. "Did you ever wonder how you could afford that luxury apartment on part-time retail wages? Or how our parents magically recovered from near bankruptcy 5 years ago? Or where your scholarship came from after you failed half your classes?" Stephanie's smug expression faltered, confusion slowly clouding her eyes. My mother made a small noise of distress, a choked sound. "Scarlett, this isn't the time," my father began, his voice strained, but I cut him off. "Actually, Dad, this is exactly the time. 4 years, I've been funding this entire family. The mortgage on your house, Dad. The business recovery grant. Mom's medical bills. Stephanie's apartment. Car payments, credit card debt, and the scholarship that mysteriously never required any academic performance." I opened the folder and placed several documents on the table. "It's all here. Bank transfers, shell companies, trust arrangements. I own the company that owns your house. I'm the anonymous donor behind Stephanie's scholarship fund. I've paid off her credit card 7 times in the last 3 years." The room had gone completely silent. Mark was staring at me, his face a mask of shock. This was news to him as well. My mother had collapsed into her chair, one hand covering her mouth. My father stood rigidly, his face ashen. Stephanie's expression shifted from confusion to pure horror as she processed what I was saying. "You're lying," she whispered, but her voice lacked any conviction. "The pregnancy report isn't the only fake document in this family, Stephanie. The differences mine were created to help you, not hurt you." I turned to address our stunned guests. "I apologize for this family drama. Please enjoy the rest of your evening. Mark and I look forward to celebrating with you at our wedding tomorrow, assuming we still have one after all these revelations." As I walked out of the dining room, I heard Stephanie begin to sob. Real tears this time. Not the performative ones she perfected over the years. Part of me felt terrible for exposing her this way, but a larger part, a much larger part, felt an overwhelming, liberating relief. The intricate web of lies I'd been maintaining for years had become its own trap. And maybe, just maybe, this painful, public truth was our only way forward. After I left the rehearsal dinner, I drove aimlessly for nearly an hour, ignoring the constant buzzing of my phone. Mark finally reached me with a text that simply read, "I'm at your place whenever you're ready to talk. No pressure. I love you." His simple message broke through my emotional numbness. I drove home to find him waiting on the porch swing, 2 glasses of wine beside him. When I sat down, he didn't pepper me with questions or judgments. He just put his arm around me and waited. "I should have told you," I finally whispered, the words catching in my throat. "About the money, about all of it." "Yes, you should have," he agreed quietly. "But I understand why you didn't." "You do?" I asked, looking up at him, disbelief etched on my face. "Scarlett, I've watched how your family treats you for 2 years. You're the responsible one, the fixer, the achiever who never gets the same praise or attention as your sister. You found a way to help them without becoming their ATM or changing how they see you. It wasn't honest, no, but it was kind in a complicated way." His deep understanding brought fresh tears to my eyes. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "That depends," he said, squeezing my hand. "Do you still want to marry me tomorrow?" Despite everything, a small, genuine laugh escaped me. "That's the only thing I'm still sure about." Mark smiled, a warmth spreading through me that steadied my trembling heart. "Then we'll figure out the rest together." My moment of peace was interrupted by my phone ringing again. My father. For the 12th time. I finally answered. "We need to talk," he said, his voice grave. "Everyone's at the house, including Stephanie." The emergency family meeting was as uncomfortable as I expected. My parents' living room, the house I'd secretly been paying for, felt suffocating. My mother sat rigid on the sofa, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. My father paced by the fireplace. Stephanie was curled in an armchair, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd seen her in years. "Explain everything," my father demanded the moment I walked in. "From the beginning." So I did. I told them about the company acquisition, the money I'd made, discovering their financial troubles, and my elaborate plan to help without changing our deeply dysfunctional family dynamic. I laid out the shell companies, the fake scholarship fund, the business grants, and all the times I'd secretly bailed out Stephanie. "Why didn't you just tell us?" my mother asked, her voice breaking, a note of wounded pride in it. "Why all the deception? Would you have accepted my help?" I countered, my voice rising with years of unspoken resentment. "Would it have changed how you treat me, compared to Stephanie? Or would I have just become the family bank while still hearing about how special and precious she is?" My father flinched at my words. "We don't favor, please," I interrupted, cutting him off sharply. "My entire childhood I heard, 'Why can't you be more like Stephanie?' when it came to being sociable. But never, 'Why can't Stephanie be more like Scarlett?' when it came to responsibility or achievement. I paid for her apartment while she dropped out of classes, and you still praised her for her independence while asking why I worked so much." An uncomfortable, heavy silence filled the room. Finally, Stephanie spoke. Her voice was quiet, almost childlike. "I didn't know," she said, looking up, her eyes wide. "About the money, any of it. That was the point." She paused, taking a shaky breath. "But why? Why help me when I've been so awful to you?" "Because you're my sister," I said simply, the truth of it surprising even me. "And because I thought if I removed the financial stresses, maybe our family could just be normal." Stephanie slowly unfolded herself from the armchair and walked to the center of the room. "I need to tell you all something," she said, her voice steadier now, though still fragile. "Scarlett's right about the pregnancy. I faked it. I was going to pretend to have complications during the ceremony tomorrow." She swallowed hard, her gaze flickering to Mark, then back to my parents. "But that's not all. I also contacted Mark's ex-girlfriend and invited her to object during the ceremony. And I've been trying to get Mark's attention since the day they got engaged." My mother gasped, a hand flying to her mouth. "Stephanie, how could you?" "Because I'm jealous, okay?" Stephanie's voice rose, cracking with raw emotion. "I've always been jealous of Scarlett. Everyone thinks I was the favorite, but being the favorite just meant no one expected anything from me. Do you know what it's like living in the shadow of someone like her? Perfect grades, perfect career, perfect fiancé. I'm a college dropout working retail at 26, and now I find out I couldn't even manage that without my big sister secretly funding everything. Her raw honesty stunned me. For the first time, I saw my sister not as my rival or the endlessly indulged favorite, but as someone who'd been damaged by the exact same family dynamic that had hurt me, just in a completely different way. My father sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of his 63 years. "We failed you both," he said quietly, his voice heavy with regret. "Scarlett, we put too much responsibility on you and took you for granted. Stephanie, we didn't give you the structure and expectations you needed to thrive." My mother wiped her eyes, fresh tears tracing paths through the mascara. "What happens now, Scarlett? Will you keep supporting us?" The naked anxiety in her question confirmed what I'd always feared, that financial support was the only real value I had to them. Before I could answer, Mark spoke from the doorway where he'd been quietly observing. "I think that's the wrong question, Mrs. Preston," he said gently, his voice calm and firm. "Maybe the first question should be how to rebuild trust in this family, not who's paying for what." I'd never loved him more than in that moment. "The wedding is postponed," I announced, my gaze sweeping over my family. "Mark and I will decide later if and when we reschedule. As for financial support," I took a deep breath. "It stops today." "All of it?" "But the mortgage," my father began, his voice tinged with panic. "You have 2 months of payments left in the account," I said, my voice unwavering. "That's enough time to figure out your next steps. You can't just cut us off." My mother protested, suddenly indignant. "I can, and I am. Not to punish you, but because this arrangement isn't healthy for any of us. I've enabled dependencies that have stunted our growth as a family." My pronouncement was met with shocked silence. Stephanie was the first to recover. "She's right," she said, surprising everyone. "This isn't normal or healthy. I need to stand on my own 2 feet for once." In the days that followed, our extended family took sides in the conflict. Some cousins thought I was cruel for cutting off support, while others praised me for finally establishing boundaries. I started seeing a therapist to process my incredibly complicated feelings about my family and my role in creating that unhealthy dynamic. Mark stood by me through it all, never judging, always supportive. One night, as we discussed whether to reschedule the wedding or simply elope, he offered an insight that would completely change my perspective. "You know what's interesting about your family?" he said. "You've all been living according to a script about who you are, the responsible one, the favorite, the struggling parents. But none of you chose those roles. You inherited them and never questioned them. So what do we do?" I asked, intrigued. "Rewrite the script," he said simply. "All of you." With that thought burning in my mind, I approached the task of rebuilding my family relationships, not as the responsible big sister or the secret benefactor, but simply as Scarlett, figuring it out one day at a time. 1 month after the rehearsal dinner revelation, the full impact of the financial reckoning hit my family like a tidal wave. Stephanie received an eviction notice when she couldn't make her rent payment. Her car, which I'd been making payments on for years, was at risk of repossession. My parents, who had been living in a house they couldn't afford and maintaining a lifestyle far beyond their actual means, faced the harsh reality of their financial situation. I maintained my distance but stayed informed through Mark, who had unexpectedly become the family mediator. He reported that my parents were arguing constantly about money, my mother wanting to ask me for help, my father insisting they needed to solve their own problems for once. "Your dad's looking at retirement account options," Mark told me after having coffee with my father. "And your mom is researching how to sell a house themselves to avoid realtor fees." "And Stephanie?" I asked, trying to sound casual, my heart in my throat. "She's applied for 7 jobs in the past week. Actual full-time positions, not just retail." I felt a complex mix of emotions. Guilt for their struggles, yes, but also a fierce pride that they were finally taking action, and a lingering hurt from years of family dynamics that had led to this breaking point. After 6 weeks of separation, I agreed to meet my parents for lunch at a modest diner, their choice, which itself signaled a change. My mother had lost weight, and my father's hair seemed grayer, but they both greeted me with genuine warmth rather than the tense formality I'd expected. "We've been working with a financial advisor," my father said after we ordered, looking me squarely in the eye. "Creating a realistic budget based on our actual income, not supplements." "We should have done this years ago," my mother added, her voice filled with regret. "We're selling the house. Found a nice condo that's within our means." I simply nodded, surprised by their pragmatic, honest approach. "That sounds sensible." "Scarlett," my father said, leaning forward earnestly, "we owe you an apology, not just for taking your money without knowing, but for all the years before that. We placed too much responsibility on you and gave too little structure to Stephanie. We see that now. We've started family therapy," my mother added, her gaze imploring. "All three of us. We'd like you to join when you're ready." Their humility and self-awareness caught me completely off guard. I'd expected defensiveness or manipulation, not genuine accountability. After lunch, Mark suggested a compromise that surprised me. "What if you set up a proper, transparent financial arrangement? Not secretly funding everything, but maybe helping with specific things with clear boundaries." "Like what?" I asked, intrigued. "Like offering to help your parents with a down payment on the condo as a gift, not a secret payment. Or helping Stephanie with tuition if she goes back to school, but with clear academic requirements." The idea had merit. It would allow me to help my family without enabling dependency or resentment. After much consideration, I called a family meeting at Mark's house, neutral territory, to discuss the path forward. Stephanie arrived first, looking noticeably different. Gone were the designer clothes and perfectly styled hair. She wore jeans and a simple blouse, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "I got a job," she announced without preamble, her eyes bright. "At Westfield Architecture. Mark's friend Carlos hired me as an office manager." "That's great," I said, genuinely pleased. "How is it going?" "Hard," she admitted, a wry smile playing on her lips. "I've never had to be somewhere at 8 a.m. every day, actually accountable for things. But I kind of like it. Having structure, I mean." My parents arrived next, bringing a folder of financial documents. "We've worked out a budget," my father explained, "based solely on our income and the equity we'll get from downsizing. And we'd like your input," my mother added, "not your money." I reviewed their plans, genuinely impressed by their thoroughness. The condo they'd found was modest but nice, and their new budget accounted for all necessities while eliminating the luxuries they'd grown accustomed to. "This looks solid," I said, returning the folder. "I'd like to make a proposal, though." I outlined a limited support plan. A one-time gift to help with a condo down payment contingent on them sticking to their budget, tuition assistance for Stephanie if she returned to school, contingent on maintaining AB average, and a small emergency fund for true family crises, administered by an independent trustee. "This isn't an ATM arrangement," I clarified. "These are specific supports with clear boundaries and expectations." To my surprise, my father shook his head. "We appreciate the offer, Scarlett, truly. But we need to do this ourselves for now. Maybe revisit in a year when we've proven to ourselves, as much as to you, that we can be financially responsible." Their refusal of my help was perhaps the strongest evidence, yet that real, profound change was occurring. As we continued talking, another revelation emerged. Delivered by Stephanie, her voice hushed. She had been stealing from our parents for years, taking cash from their wallets and business, secretly contributing to their financial problems. "I'd convinced myself they owed it to me," she admitted, not meeting anyone's eyes. "I never thought of it as stealing." The admission stunned me. All this time, I'd been secretly supporting everyone, and Stephanie had been secretly undermining that support. The dysfunction ran deeper than I'd realized. After the meeting, Stephanie asked to speak with me privately. We walked to a nearby park, sitting on a bench overlooking a small pond. "I hit rock bottom last week," she said, watching ducks glide across the water. "Got down to my last $20. No credit, no savings, nothing. I went to a pawn shop to sell Mom's bracelet that I'd borrowed." "Did you sell it?" I asked, my voice soft. She shook her head. "I couldn't go through with it." That's when I realized how far I'd fallen, ready to sell a stolen family heirloom for cash. I walked out and applied for jobs all day instead. Her vulnerability cracked something open in me. For the first time in years, maybe ever, we were having an honest conversation without pretense or competition. "I never wanted to hurt you," she continued, her gaze meeting mine, genuine regret in her eyes. "Not really. I just wanted what you had. Not the money, but the confidence, the certainty. You always knew who you are and what you want." I laughed softly, a bittersweet sound. "That's the biggest myth about me. I've been terrified and uncertain plenty of times. I just didn't show it." "Why not?" she asked. "Because I was the responsible one, the achiever. That was my role. And I was the screw-up," Stephanie said quietly. "The eternal child who couldn't be trusted with responsibility." We sat in silence, contemplating how we'd both been constrained by these family-assigned identities. "I found your journal," I admitted, my voice low. "That's how I knew about the fake pregnancy plan." Instead of anger, Stephanie looked almost relieved. "I'm glad you did. I don't think I would have had the courage to stop myself." As sunset painted the sky in vibrant oranges and pinks, Stephanie reached over and took my hand. "I'm sorry, Scarlett, for everything. I want to be better. Not like you. I'll never be like you, but a better version of me." I squeezed her hand. I'd like to know that version of Stephanie. Walking back, I realized Mark was right. We were rewriting the script, creating new possibilities for who we could be as individuals and as a family. The process would be messy and imperfect, but for the first time in years, it felt authentic. 6 months after the dramatic rehearsal dinner revelation, I stood in the small dressing room of a beachside venue, adjusting my simple white dress. Mark and I had decided to move forward with a much smaller, more intimate wedding. 40 guests instead of 200, a local restaurant reception instead of a hotel ballroom, wildflowers instead of elaborate arrangements. "You look beautiful," my mother said from the doorway. Our relationship had transformed over the past months. Without the secret financial ties, and with the help of family therapy, we'd begun developing a more honest connection. She was learning to see me as a complete person rather than just the responsible one. And I was learning to share my vulnerabilities with her. "Is Stephanie here?" I asked, trying to sound casual. My mother nodded. "She's helping arrange the chairs on the beach. She's nervous about seeing you." Stephanie was not at my wedding party this time. That trust would take longer to rebuild, but I had invited her as a guest, a first step toward healing. The changes in our family over those 6 months had been remarkable. My parents had sold their large house and moved into a comfortable condo they could actually afford. My father had taken a part-time consulting position to supplement his income, and my mother had started a small online business selling handcrafted jewelry. They weren't wealthy, but they were making ends meet, and more importantly, they were doing it together. Honestly, Stephanie had surprised everyone with her transformation. Still working at Westfield Architecture, she'd received her first promotion and was taking evening classes to complete her business degree. She lived in a modest apartment with a roommate, drove a used car she'd purchased herself, and was slowly building her credit score through responsible financial habits. Our family therapy sessions had been challenging but enlightening. We'd uncovered patterns of behavior that stretched back generations. My father's parents had favored his younger brother, creating the template he unconsciously replicated with his own daughters. My mother's family had valued appearance over substance, explaining her discomfort with financial transparency. These insights didn't excuse the dysfunction, but they helped us understand and address it. Mark and I had established clear boundaries about future family financial support. We created a small education fund for Stephanie with specific conditions. She needed to maintain her grades, continue therapy, and demonstrate financial responsibility. For my parents, we offered matching contributions to a retirement account, encouraging their independence while providing a safety net. "It's time," my father said, appearing at the door, a proud smile on his face. He looked different, his posture more relaxed, his smile more genuine. "Ready." I took his arm, and we made our way down to the beach where chairs had been arranged in a semicircle facing the sparkling ocean. Mark waited near the water's edge, handsome in his light gray suit. Our closest friends and family members turned to watch as my father walked me down the sandy aisle. I spotted Stephanie in the second row, wearing a simple blue dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. Our eyes met briefly, and she gave me a small, sincere smile, Not the performative grin she'd perfected over the years, but something real and a little sad. The ceremony was brief and heartfelt. Mark and I exchanged vows we'd written ourselves, promising honesty, partnership, and growth. As we sealed our marriage with a kiss, I felt a sense of rightness that had been missing from our original wedding plans. This ceremony reflected who we truly were, not who we thought we should be. At the reception, held at a local restaurant overlooking the water, Stephanie approached me hesitantly during the meal. "Congratulations," she said, keeping a respectful distance. "Everything was beautiful." "Thank you for coming," I replied. "It means a lot." An awkward silence stretched between us until Stephanie took a deep breath. "I have something for you. Not a wedding gift exactly, but, well, here." She handed me an envelope. Inside was a business plan, meticulously researched, professionally presented, for a small graphic design company she wanted to launch after completing her degree. "I'm not asking for funding," she clarified quickly, a nervous laugh escaping her. "I just wanted your opinion as someone who built something successful." I was deeply touched by the gesture and what it represented. Stephanie was seeking my input as an equal, not out of manipulation or competition. "I'd be happy to review it," I said, a genuine smile spreading across my face. "Maybe we could get coffee next week to discuss it." Her face lit up with genuine pleasure. "I'd like that." Later, during the toasts, Stephanie surprised everyone by standing and asking to speak. Mark squeezed my hand as she nervously approached the microphone. "I'm not in the wedding party," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "And there are good reasons for that. But I wanted to say something to my sister and Mark." She paused, collecting herself, her gaze sweeping over the room before settling on me. "Scarlett, you've always been my benchmark, the person I measure myself against, and always fell short. It made me resent you instead of recognizing how much I could learn from you. What I've realized over these past months is that your success didn't take anything away from me. Your light doesn't diminish mine. It can help me find my own path." Tears pricked my eyes as she continued. "Mark, thank you for loving my sister and for your kindness to our family, even when we didn't deserve it. And thank you both for giving me the chance to be here today to witness the beginning of your life together." She raised her glass, her voice clear and strong. "To Scarlett and Mark, may your honesty with each other create the foundation for a lifetime of happiness." After the toasts, while Mark danced with my mother, my father sat beside me at the table. "I have a confession," he said quietly. "I knew about your financial support earlier than you think. Not the extent of it, but I suspected." "How?" I asked, surprised. "The timing was too convenient. Our business troubles easing right when your company was acquired. But I didn't say anything because—" He looked away, embarrassed. "Because it was easier not to. I let pride and shame keep me from having an honest conversation with my own daughter." "We all made mistakes, Dad," I said gently, placing my hand over his. He nodded, his gaze meeting mine. "But we're finding our way now, aren't we? As a family." "Yes," I agreed. "I think we are." Our honeymoon was simple, a week at a quiet resort in the Caribbean where Mark and I swam, read books, and talked endlessly about our future. We discussed having children someday and how we would approach parenting differently than our own families had. "We'll make different mistakes," Mark pointed out pragmatically. "No parent is perfect." "True," I agreed, "but we'll be honest about them. No family secrets, no assigned roles, no financial deceptions, even well-intentioned ones." On our last evening, watching the sunset from our balcony, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The fake pregnancy report that had been meant to ruin my wedding had ultimately saved our family by forcing us to confront truths we'd all been avoiding. Stephanie's jealousy and my secret financial control had been symptoms of a deeper dysfunction that had finally been brought to light. When we returned home, I followed through on my promise to review Stephanie's business plan. We met at a coffee shop, and I was genuinely impressed by the thought she'd put into her concept. "This is really good," I told her honestly. "You've identified a solid niche, and your financial projections are conservative but promising." "Really?" Her face lit up with pride. "I've been researching business programs. I want to apply for my MBA after I finish my bachelor's degree." "I think you'd be excellent at it," I said, meaning every word. "Have you thought about applying for scholarships?" "Actually, yes," she replied, a mischievous glint in her eye. I've already submitted applications for 3 merit-based programs. Real ones this time. As we continued discussing her plans, I realized we were having our first conversation as adults. Not as the responsible sister and the favorite, not as the achiever and the screw-up, but as 2 women finding their way in the world, connected by blood and increasingly by choice. 6 months later, Stephanie was accepted into a competitive business program with a partial scholarship. My parents had settled comfortably into their new, more modest lifestyle. Mark and I had bought a new house with a guest room that had already hosted each family member for visits. The journey wasn't perfect. We still had disagreements and moments of falling back into old patterns. But the foundation had shifted from secrets and resentment to honesty and growth. The sister who had once faked a pregnancy to ruin my wedding was now someone I spoke with weekly, sharing advice and genuine connection. The parents who had once unknowingly accepted my financial support now stood proudly on their own feet, with appropriate boundaries and transparent communication. As for me, I was learning that being the fixer, the responsible one, wasn't my only identity. I could be vulnerable, ask for help, make mistakes, and still be valued. The control I'd maintained through secret financial support had been an illusion that ultimately hurt everyone, including myself. Real control, I discovered, came from honesty about who we are, what we need, and how we show up for each other. And sometimes, the greatest gift we can give our family isn't money or security, but the truth, however uncomfortable it might be. Have you ever experienced a family betrayal that ended up transforming your relationships for the better? My sister's attempt to ruin my wedding actually saved our family by forcing us to confront truths we'd all been avoiding. I really want to hear your thoughts on this. What would you have done in my place? Or have you ever faced a moment where you had to tear down old family dynamics to build something new? Drop a comment below and tell me your own story. I'm genuinely curious to know what you think.